The crystal blue waters of Aquinas Prime shook with each explosion from above, deep beneath the surface in the bioluminescent city of Coral Heights. Flux singer Marielle pressed her webbed hands against the communication console. Her gills fluttered with panic as another blast shook the protective dome around their city. "The shields are failing," whispered her assistant, Tidewalker Kess. His usually bright blue skin had turned pale with fear. "The Korthak ships are getting closer." Marielle looked through the transparent walls of their underwater city. Above them, pieces of burning metal fell like deadly rain into the ocean. These were parts of their orbital defense platforms. The Korthak Empire had destroyed them all in just 3 hours. "How many evacuation ships made it out?" Marielle asked. "Only 12, Kess replied, his voice barely audible. "The rest were destroyed before they could leave the atmosphere." Marielle closed her eyes. 12 ships. That meant only 12,000 of her people had escaped. There were still 40 million Zephyrians on Aquinas Prime, most of them children and elderly who could not travel in space. The Zephyrians had always been peaceful. For over 3,000 years they had never fought a war. They were known throughout the galaxy as healers, diplomats, and artists. Their biotechnology could cure diseases that had plagued other species for centuries. Their music could calm the angriest creatures. But they had no weapons, no armies, no way to fight back against an invasion. The Korthak Empire was different. They were made of living silicon and metal, and they ate planets. Literally. They would strip every mineral, every metal, every useful element from a world until nothing was left but empty rock. They had done this to 17 worlds already. No one had been able to stop them because no one wanted to fight a war. "Send the emergency signal," Marielle said. "Contact the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition. Tell them we need immediate help." Kess's hands moved over the bio-neural interface. The living coral that made up their communication system glowed brighter as it sent the message across space. "Message sent to Coalition Headquarters on Centauri 7, he reported. They waited. Minutes passed. The explosions above them grew louder. "Any response?" Marielle asked. "Nothing yet. Wait." Kess paused, listening to the signals coming through the bio-neural network. "There's something wrong. The star charts are corrupted. The bombardment is interfering with our navigation systems." "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure where our message went. The stellar positioning data was damaged when I sent it." Another massive explosion shook the city. This time, cracks appeared in the protective dome above them. Water began to pour in from the damaged sections. "Emergency systems activated," announced the city's biocomputer in its calm, musical voice. "Hull breach detected. Estimated time until total dome collapse, 47 minutes. Marielle felt her heart sinking. Both of them. Like all Zephyrians, she had 2 hearts to pump blood through her aquatic body. Right now, both were beating fast with terror. "Keep sending the distress signal," she ordered. "Send it on all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." Kess worked frantically at the console. His bioluminescent patches flashed in patterns that showed extreme stress. "I'm broadcasting on every channel I can find. Emergency frequencies, commercial bands, even the old exploration channels that nobody uses anymore." Above them, the dome cracked further. Emergency teams of Zephyrians swam quickly through the city, helping others evacuate to deeper levels. But Marielle knew it was hopeless. The Korthak would not stop until every Zephyrian was dead and their beautiful world was stripped bare. The communication console suddenly lit up with activity. "Something's happening," Kess said, excitement in his voice. "I'm getting a response. Someone heard us. The Coalition. I don't think so. This signal is coming from a different direction. From a system that's not on our star charts." Marielle swam closer to the console. "What do they say?" Kess listened carefully to the incoming transmission. His expression changed from hope to confusion to something that might have been fear. "They say they received our distress call. They're asking for our exact location and the nature of the threat. They want to know how many hostile ships we're facing." "That's good news, isn't it?" "Maybe. But Marielle, they're asking very specific questions about weapons and military strength. They want to know what kind of armor the Korthak ships have, what weapons they're using, and how they're positioned around our planet." So the Coalition never asks questions like that. The Coalition asks about casualties and civilian populations. These people are asking like they're planning to fight. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights in the city flickered. "I don't care who they are," Marielle said firmly. "If they're willing to help us, give them everything they want to know." Kess sent the information. Within minutes, they received another message. "They say they're coming," Kess reported. "They'll be here in—" He paused, checking the translation. "They'll be here in 18 hours. They say to hold tight and keep our heads down." 18 hours? That's impossible. It would take the Coalition at least 3 days to organize a rescue mission, and that's if they decided to help us immediately. I know, but that's what they said. The dome above them cracked completely. Water rushed in with tremendous force, but the emergency barriers held. "For now, who are they?" Muriel asked. "Did they identify themselves?" Kess checked the transmission data. "They call themselves the Terran Defense Fleet, Third Fleet specifically. Their commanding officer is someone called Admiral Webb." "Terran? I've never heard of them." "Neither have I. I'm checking our database of known species." Kess's bioluminescent patches flickered as he accessed the information systems. "There's nothing. No record of any species called Terrans. No record of any system called Terra. Maybe they're a new species, one that just developed space travel. Maybe. But Mariel, there's something else. I managed to get a partial scan of their ships when they responded to us. And," Kess hesitated, "they're big. Really big. And they're heavily armed. These aren't exploration ships or diplomatic vessels. These are warships. Good. Maybe they can actually fight the Korthak. That's what worries me. What kind of species builds ships like that? What kind of people think that way?" Before Mariel could answer, the city's emergency system spoke again. "Warning. Multiple hull breaches detected. Evacuation to level 5 is mandatory. Estimated time until total structural collapse, 23 minutes. All around them, Zephyrians were swimming quickly through the corridors, carrying their young and helping the elderly. The bioluminescent lights that had always made their city beautiful were now flashing in emergency patterns. "We need to go," Kess said. "Wait. Send one more message to these Terrans. Tell them we're grateful for their help. Tell them that we're a peaceful people and that we've never been in a war before. Maybe that will help them understand what kind of situation they're walking into." Kess sent the message quickly, then they both swam toward the evacuation tunnels. Behind them, their communication center collapsed as the dome finally gave way completely. As they moved through the dark water toward the deeper emergency shelters, Mariel wondered about these mysterious Terrans. Would they really come? Could they actually fight the Korthak Empire? And most importantly, what would they want in return for their help? Above them, the bombardment continued. The Korthak ships hung in orbit like metal vultures, slowly destroying everything beautiful about Aquinas Prime. In 18 hours, Mariel would have her answers about the Terrans. She just hoped her people would still be alive to see them. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the massive holographic display that showed known space. The distress signal from the unknown species was still playing on repeat, and every time she heard it, her jaw tightened a little more. The aliens in the message were clearly terrified. Their voices shook with panic, and in the background, she could hear what sounded like children crying. The universal translator was having trouble with their language, but the fear came through clearly enough. "Ma'am, we've finished analyzing the signal," reported Lieutenant Torres, her communications officer. It was definitely meant for someone else. The stellar coordinates were corrupted, probably by whatever's attacking them. Who was it supposed to reach? Best guess? The Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition. We've heard of them from the Centauri trade reports. They're some kind of diplomatic organization that handles disputes between alien species. Chen nodded. Humanity had been aware of other intelligent species for about 50 years now, ever since the first contact with the Centauri merchants. But Earth had been careful to stay out of galactic politics. Most alien species seemed to think humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable. They preferred to trade with humanity at arm's length. What's the Coalition's response time for something like this? According to their public protocols, they would need to organize a committee, debate the situation, vote on intervention, and then coordinate with member species. Minimum time frame would be 2 weeks, probably longer. 2 weeks. Chen looked at the holographic display again, focusing on the location where the distress signal had originated. "These people don't have 2 weeks. No, ma'am, they don't." Chen made her decision. "Get me Admiral Webb on secure transmission. Priority Alpha." Within minutes, Admiral Marcus Webb's face appeared on the main screen. He was on board the TDF Indomitable, somewhere in the outer system running training exercises with the Third Fleet. "What's the situation, Commander?" Webb asked. His voice was calm, but Chen could see the sharp intelligence in his eyes. Webb had been fighting pirates and hostile aliens for over 20 years. We've intercepted a distress signal, sir. Alien species under attack. They're being invaded by something called the Korthak Empire. I see. And this concerns us how? Chen played the recording. Webb listened without expression, but she noticed his hands clenching slightly when the children's voices could be heard in the background. How far away? Webb asked when the recording finished. 18 hours at maximum burn with the Third Fleet. Our orders from Earth Command? Stay out of galactic politics unless directly threatened. Webb was quiet for a long moment. Chen knew what he was thinking. Officially, they should ignore this and let the proper galactic authorities handle it. But both of them had heard those voices, had heard the terror and desperation of people facing extinction. Commander, in your opinion, are these hostiles a potential threat to human space? Chen understood what Webb was really asking. He needed a military justification for intervention. Sir, any species capable of orbital bombardment and planetary invasion represents a potential threat to human colonies. It would be tactically sound to assess their capabilities. Agreed. Have the Third Fleet change course immediately. We're going to conduct a reconnaissance mission. Yes, sir. Webb cut the transmission and Chen immediately began issuing orders. Within an hour, 18 human warships were burning hard toward the Aquinas system. The Third Fleet was not the largest formation in the Terran Defense Force, but it was one of the most experienced. Every ship had seen combat against pirates, raiders, or hostile alien forces. The crews knew their business. 17 hours later, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Aquinas system. Contact, reported the sensor officer on the Indomitable. Multiple alien vessels in orbit around the fourth planet. I count 43 ships of unknown configuration. Webb studied the tactical display. The alien ships were spread out around the blue-green world, bombarding the surface with energy weapons. They were taking their time, being methodical. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Any response to our arrival? Negative, sir. They don't seem to have noticed us yet. Open a channel to the lead alien vessel. The communication officer worked for a moment, then nodded. Channel open, sir. Webb's message was simple and direct. Attention unknown vessels. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. You have 30 minutes to comply. This is your only warning. The response came quickly. The main screen filled with the image of something that looked like a cross between a robot and a spider, made of dark metal and glowing crystals. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding machinery. I am Warlord Thex Prime of the Korthak Empire. You will identify yourself and state your business in this system, or you will be destroyed. I am Admiral Webb of the Terran Defense Fleet. I'm ordering you to withdraw from this system. Terran? The alien's crystalline eyes flashed. This species is not known to us. You will submit to the Empire or share the fate of the water breathers below. I don't think so. Thex Prime leaned forward. You dare threaten the Korthak Empire? We have conquered 17 worlds. We have destroyed species that ruled among the stars when your world was still cooling from its formation. Webb smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Let me show you something, he said. The communication officer, without being told, began transmitting archived footage from humanity's various conflicts. The Martian insurrection, where human ships had fought in the asteroid belt for 6 months, the glass fields of Europa, where a terrorist organization had tried to crack the moon's ice shell and flood the colonies below. The resource wars, where corporations had fought private battles with full military fleets. Thex Prime watched in silence as the images showed human ships continuing to fight even when heavily damaged. Human soldiers in power armor boarding enemy vessels and, most disturbingly, humans treating warfare as a routine activity that they had clearly done many times before. These are historical records, Webb explained calmly. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've been fighting in space for over a century. We've developed weapons, tactics, and strategies specifically for destroying other intelligent species. The alien commander's mechanical face showed something that might have been uncertainty. Your point? My point is that you've been fighting peaceful species who don't know how to fight back. We do. Webb gestured to his tactical officer. The Third Fleet began moving into attack formation. The human ships moved with practiced precision, spreading out to surround the Korthak force while maintaining interlocking fields of fire. You still have 25 minutes to withdraw, Webb said. I suggest you use them. Thex Prime cut the transmission. On the planet below, the Zephyrians detected the new arrivals and tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Their bio-neural sensors could analyze the human ships, and what they found confused and frightened them. These vessels were clearly built for war. Every design choice spoke of a species that expected to be shot at regularly. The hulls were heavily armored with multiple backup systems and redundant power supplies. The weapons were not elegant or efficient like most galactic technology. They were brutal and overwhelming. Fluxinger Marielle, now in an emergency shelter 2 miles below the ocean floor, received the sensor reports with mixed feelings. "They're actually here," she told Kess. "The Terrans kept their promise." "I know. But Marielle, look at these ships. What kind of people build things like this?" Before she could answer, space around Aquinas Prime lit up with weapons fire. The Korthak had decided to test these unknown aliens. 3 of their heavy cruisers opened fire on the nearest human ship, the destroyer TDF Cerberus. The human response was immediate and overwhelming. The Cerberus absorbed the alien fire on its shields, rotated to bring its main guns to bear, and returned fire with weapons that the Korthak had never seen before. Kinetic kill vehicles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Particle beams that could cut through any known armor. Missile swarms that could think for themselves and adapt to enemy countermeasures. But what shocked both the Korthak and the Zephyrians was what happened. When the Cerberus took a direct hit that penetrated its shields and tore a hole in its hull, the ship kept fighting. Emergency systems sealed the breach. Backup power rerouted around damaged sections, and the crew continued their attack as if nothing had happened. The Korthak had never encountered a species that built ships designed to continue functioning while being destroyed. Within minutes, 2 Korthak cruisers were drifting wrecks, and the third was retreating toward the main fleet. Thex Prime realized he had made a terrible mistake. These humans didn't just know how to fight. They were designed for it. Captain Elena Vasquez felt the TDF Cerberus shake as another Korthak energy beam hit their hull. Sparks flew from damaged control panels and the lights flickered, but her crew worked calmly at their stations. They had been through worse. "Damage report," she called out. "Hull breach on deck 7, ma'am," reported her engineering officer. "Emergency bulkheads are holding. We've lost about 15% of our forward armor, but all weapon systems are still online." "Good. Continue the attack." Through the main view screen, Vasquez could see the Korthak fleet spread out before them. 43 alien ships, each one larger than her destroyer. By all logical standards, the human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but the Korthak Empire had never fought humans before. "Ma'am, Admiral Webb is signaling all ships," her communications officer reported. "We're authorized to engage with maximum force." Vasquez smiled grimly. "All stations, this is the captain. We are weapons-free. Show them what humans do to bullies." The space around Aquinas Prime became a deadly light show. The human ships moved in coordinated attack patterns that the Korthak couldn't predict or counter. Where most galactic species fought in orderly lines or defensive formations, the humans fought like a pack of wolves, constantly moving, flanking, and supporting each other. The Korthak tried to respond with their traditional tactics. Their ships were bigger and more heavily armed than the human vessels, and they had always won their battles through superior firepower. But their energy weapons were designed to bombard defenseless planets, not fight maneuvering warships. The humans, on the other hand, had spent decades fighting each other. Every human weapon, every tactic, every ship design had been tested in actual combat against opponents who fought back. "Direct hit on the enemy flagship," reported the weapons officer. "Their shields are down to 60%. Keep firing. Target their weapon systems." The Cerberus shuddered again as return fire struck their starboard side. This time the hit was more serious. Atmosphere began venting from the damaged section, and several crew members were injured. "Hull breach on deck 4, engineering called out. "We're losing pressure fast. Seal it off." "How are our weapons?" "All forward guns still operational, ma'am." "Then we keep fighting." This was the difference between humans and most other species. When alien ships were damaged, they typically withdrew to fight another day. When human ships were damaged, they kept fighting until they were either victorious or completely destroyed. Across the battle zone, similar scenes were playing out. The cruiser TDF Revenge took a hit that would have destroyed most galactic warships, but its crew simply rerouted power around the damaged sections and continued their attack. The battleship TDF Thunderbolt lost its main guns, but immediately switched to missile bombardment, launching hundreds of self-guided projectiles at the enemy formation. But what truly shocked both the Korthak and the watching Zephyrians was when the humans began boarding actions. Commander Jake Morrison led the first assault team. When his transport ship, the TDF Viper, couldn't penetrate a Korthak cruiser's shields with weapons fire, he did something that no one expected. He rammed through the shields with his armored boarding craft and went inside. Breach successful, Morrison reported over the comm system as his team cut through the alien hull with plasma torches. We're inside their ship. The Korthak had never encountered an enemy willing to fight hand-to-hand combat in the vacuum of space. Their ships weren't designed for internal battles. When humans in powered armor began moving through their corridors, the silicon-based aliens found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. Humans fought like they expected to be hurt. Their armor was designed to keep working even when damaged. Their weapons were built for close combat in tight spaces. Most importantly, human soldiers had been trained to fight in any environment, including inside enemy ships while traveling at interstellar speeds. Enemy boarding parties have taken control of their cruiser, Morrison reported. We're turning their own weapons against the rest of their fleet. Down on Aquinas Prime, Flux Singer Muriel and the other Zephyrians watched the battle through their bio-neural sensors. What they saw changed their understanding of what intelligent life could be. They're fighting inside the Korthak ships, Kess whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. They're actually boarding enemy vessels during a space battle. How is that possible? Asked another Zephyrian. The speeds involved, the radiation, the vacuum of space. I don't know, Muriel replied. But they're doing it. The Korthak fleet began to fall apart. Their ships were individually more powerful than the human vessels, but they had no answer for human tactics. The aliens fought like they expected to win through superior technology. The humans fought like they expected their enemy to fight back intelligently. Warlord Thex Prime watched his fleet being systematically destroyed and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Not just fear of losing this battle, but fear of what these humans represented. His empire had conquered 17 worlds because no one had been willing to match their level of violence. The galactic community preferred diplomatic solutions, economic pressure, anything except actual warfare. The Korthak had been the most violent species in known space, but these humans were something else entirely. They didn't just use violence as a tool. They had perfected it as an art form. Their ships, their weapons, their tactics, everything about them spoke of a species that had been fighting wars for so long that it was part of their nature. My lord, his tactical officer reported, we've lost 28 ships. Our remaining forces are requesting permission to withdraw. Thex Prime looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was still in perfect formation despite taking heavy damage. Several of their ships were clearly wounded, but none had withdrawn from the battle. They fought with a determination that the Korthak commander found incomprehensible. Send a message to the human admiral, he ordered. Tell him we wish to discuss terms. Terms, my lord? Surrender terms. We cannot defeat these creatures. The message was sent, and Admiral Webb's response was immediate. Withdraw all forces from this system immediately. Any ship that remains in 30 minutes will be destroyed. These are the only terms. Thex Prime had no choice. He gave the order to retreat. The surviving Korthak ships began moving away from Aquinas Prime as quickly as their damaged engines could carry them. Behind them, the human fleet maintained perfect formation, ready to resume the battle if necessary. But the fight was over. In less than 4 hours, the Terran Defense Fleet had accomplished what the entire galactic community had been unable to do. They had defeated the Korthak Empire. As the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Webb opened a communication channel to the planet below. Attention, Aquinas Prime. This is Admiral Webb of the Terran Defense Fleet. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Is there anything you need assistance with? In her underwater shelter, Marielle listened to the human's calm, professional voice and realized that her people's ordeal was over. The terrifying aliens who had been destroying their world were gone, driven away by an even more terrifying species that had somehow come to their rescue. Thank you. She transmitted back. Thank you for saving us. You're welcome. We'll remain in system for a few days to make sure the hostiles don't return. If you need medical assistance or help with repairs, just let us know. The transmission ended and Marielle looked around at her fellow survivors. They were safe. The Korthak were gone, but now they had to figure out how to deal with their rescuers. The humans had saved them, but they had also shown themselves to be the most militarily capable species anyone had ever encountered. What would they want in return? What did you say to people who treated space combat like a routine job? Above them, the human fleet settled into a protective orbit around Aquinas Prime. For the first time in days, the Zephyrian homeworld was quiet. The bombardment had stopped, the fires were being extinguished, and rescue teams were already working to find survivors. But throughout the galaxy, word of what had happened was beginning to spread. An unknown species had appeared from nowhere and defeated the Korthak Empire in a single battle. Everything was about to change. Dr. Rebecca Torres floated in the specially constructed meeting chamber aboard the TDF Discovery, watching as the first formal contact between humanity and the Zephyrians was about to begin. The chamber was half filled with water to accommodate the aquatic aliens, while the human side remained filled with air. A transparent barrier separated the two environments. Through the water, she could see 3 Zephyrian representatives approaching. They moved with graceful swimming motions, their bioluminescent patches creating beautiful patterns of blue and green light. The lead figure, who had introduced herself as flux singer Marielle, appeared to be their primary diplomat, Dr. Torres. Marielle's voice came through the waterproof speakers, translated by their bio-neural communication system. We cannot adequately express our gratitude for your species' intervention. You're welcome, Torres replied. We're glad we could help. Though I should mention that the 3rd Fleet was actually the closest available force. If you had needed help from one of our other fleets, it would have taken longer to reach you. The 3 Zephyrians exchanged glances. Torres noticed that their bioluminescent patches dimmed slightly. Other fleets? Marielle asked carefully. Oh yes. The Terran Defense Force maintains 7 active fleets for system defense and patrol duties. The 3rd Fleet was running exercises near the outer colonies when we received your distress signal. The Zephyrians' patches dimmed further. Torres realized she might have said something wrong, but she wasn't sure what. How many ships are in each fleet? Asked one of the other Zephyrians. It varies. The 1st Fleet is our largest, with about 60 ships including the heavy carriers. The 3rd Fleet is smaller, only 18 ships, but they're all frontline combat vessels. The Zephyrians were now clearly distressed. Their bioluminescent displays had shifted to patterns that Torres didn't recognize, but which somehow conveyed anxiety. Dr. Torres, Marielle said slowly, how many people live on your homeworld? Earth? About 16 billion last census. The Zephyrian delegates went completely still. Their bioluminescent patches stopped glowing entirely for several seconds. Did we say something wrong? Torres asked. No, Marielle replied quickly. It's just, our entire species numbers only about 40 million across 12 worlds. Your single planet has 400 times our total population. Torres realized the problem. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overwhelm you with numbers. We should probably talk about more pleasant subjects. Yes, that would be good. Perhaps you could tell us about your culture? What does your species value? Torres smiled. Well, humans value many things. Family, friendship, art, music, scientific discovery. We love to explore and learn new things. We're very protective of children and those who can't protect themselves. That sounds wonderful. What do your children learn about? The usual things. Mathematics, science, history, literature. We teach them to be careful around strangers and how to defend themselves if necessary. Defend themselves? The Zephyrian translator seemed to have trouble with the concept. Well, yes. Basic self-defense. How to recognize dangerous situations, how to get help. Simple fighting techniques if they're attacked. The Zephyrians exchanged those glances again. You teach your children to fight? Not to fight exactly. Just to protect themselves. Every human child learns basic self-defense. We don't understand. Why would children need to know how to fight? Torres paused, realizing she was stepping into cultural differences she hadn't anticipated. Well, there are dangerous people sometimes. Criminals, predators, hostile aliens. Children need to know how to stay safe. But why don't you simply remove the dangerous people? We try to, but there are always some. Crime has been part of human society for thousands of years. The Zephyrians looked confused and disturbed. Perhaps we could discuss your entertainment, Mariel suggested, clearly trying to change the subject. Sure. Humans enjoy all kinds of entertainment. Sports, movies, books, games. What kinds of sports? Oh, lots of different ones. Football, basketball, boxing, mixed martial arts, racing. Mixed martial arts? It's a fighting sport where people compete to see who's the better fighter. Very popular. The Zephyrians' bioluminescent patches began flashing in what Torres was beginning to recognize as distress patterns. People fight each other for entertainment. Well, yes, in a controlled environment with rules and safety measures. It's very exciting to watch. One of the other Zephyrians made a sound that the translator couldn't process. Torres suspected it might be equivalent to someone being sick. Dr. Torres, Mariel said carefully, I think we may need to understand something fundamental about your species. Do humans enjoy violence? Torres thought about how to answer that honestly. Some aspects of it, yes. We enjoy competitive conflict, testing ourselves against challenges, overcoming obstacles through force when necessary. But we also have very strong rules about when violence is acceptable, such as protecting yourself, protecting others, defending your home or your people. We don't approve of violence against the innocent or the helpless, but you do approve of it sometimes? When it's necessary, yes. The Zephyrians were quiet for a long time. Finally, Mariel spoke again. Dr. Torres, this is very difficult for us to understand. The Zephyrian people have never fought a war. We have no weapons, no armies, no concept of military force. The idea of deliberately hurting another intelligent being it causes us psychological distress just to think about it. Torres nodded. I can understand that. But if you'll permit me to ask, how did you deal with the Korthak invasion? How were you planning to stop them? We weren't. We were hoping the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition would negotiate with them, find some diplomatic solution. And if diplomacy failed? Then we would have died. All of us. Torres stared at the Zephyrian diplomat. You would have let yourselves be exterminated rather than fight back? We don't know how to fight back. It's not part of who we are, but you asked for help. You sent that distress signal. Yes, we asked for help, but we expected mediators, peacekeepers, people who would negotiate with the Korthak, find some way to make them leave without violence. The Korthak were bombarding your cities. They were killing your people, including children. Negotiation wasn't going to work. We know that now. But Dr. Torres, you have to understand how shocking this is for us. Your people came to our system and killed thousands of Korthak in a few hours. You did it efficiently, without hesitation, almost casually. That terrifies us. Torres felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. Are you saying you don't want our help? No, that's not what I'm saying. We're grateful. You saved our entire species, but we're also frightened of you. We would never hurt you. We came here to help. We believe that. But Dr. Torres, your people are so capable of violence. You have weapons that can destroy planets, ships that can fight while being torn apart, soldiers who will board enemy vessels in the middle of a space battle. What happens if we ever disagree with you about something? What happens if our interests conflict with yours? Torres understood their fear now. From the Zephyrian perspective, humanity had just demonstrated that they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The fact that they had used that dangerous nature to help didn't make them any less dangerous. We have laws, Torres said. Rules about how we interact with other species. We don't attack people who haven't attacked us first. But who enforces those laws? Who could stop you if you decided to break them? Torres didn't have a good answer for that. Perhaps, Mariel suggested, we could learn from each other. You could teach us how to protect ourselves, and we could teach you about peaceful solutions to conflicts. That might work, but it would mean your people learning to fight. Yes, and that idea terrifies us almost as much as being defenseless. The meeting continued for several more hours, but both sides knew that everything had changed. The Zephyrians were grateful to be alive, but they were also deeply disturbed by the violent nature of their rescuers. The humans were proud of their successful rescue mission, but they were beginning to understand that their very existence challenged the peaceful nature of galactic civilization. When the formal contact session ended, Torres returned to her quarters and filed her report. Her recommendation was simple: proceed very carefully. The Zephyrians were grateful allies, but they were also terrified of the species that had saved them. And if the peaceful Zephyrians were this disturbed by human nature, what would the rest of the galaxy think when they learned about Earth? Ambassador Takar of the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Voice, staring at the tactical display with complete bewilderment. According to the data from Aquinas Prime, the impossible had happened. The Korthak Empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for decades, had been defeated in a single battle by an unknown species. Are these readings accurate? Takar asked his tactical analyst. We've confirmed them with 3 independent sources, Ambassador. The Korthak fleet engaged unknown vessels and was forced to retreat after losing approximately 60% of their ships. The engagement lasted less than 4 hours. Takar's forearms gestured in a pattern that indicated extreme confusion. His species, the Vrishan, had been mediating galactic conflicts for over 2,000 years. They had seen every form of warfare, every type of diplomatic solution. This was beyond their experience. Who are these Terrans? He asked. Unknown, sir. No species by that name appears in any of our databases. The Zephyrians describe them as bipedal mammalian, from a world they call Earth. But there's no record of any such civilization in our charts. How is that possible? We've mapped this entire spiral arm. Sir, according to the Zephyrian reports, the Terran fleet came from a region of space marked in our charts as a quarantine zone. Takar's skin pattern shifted to display alarm. The Deathworld sectors? Yes, sir. Every civilized species in the galaxy knew about the Deathworld sectors. They were regions of space where planets existed that could theoretically support life, but which were so hostile, so dangerous, that no sane species would ever try to colonize them. High-gravity worlds with poisonous atmospheres, planets with extreme weather patterns that could kill most life forms, systems with radiation levels that would sterilize normal ships. The sectors were quarantined not because they contained hostile aliens, but because they were simply too dangerous for galactic civilization to explore. You're telling me that an intelligent species evolved on one of those worlds? It appears so, sir. And they've developed space travel. Takar felt something he had rarely experienced in his long diplomatic career. Fear. What kind of creatures could survive on a death world? What kind of civilization would emerge from such an environment? Set course for Aquinas Prime. We need to assess this situation personally. The Harmony's Voice arrived at the Zephyrian homeworld 3 days later, along with a small fleet of coalition vessels. What they found there challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization. The human fleet was still in orbit, but they had organized themselves into a defensive perimeter around the planet. Their ships moved in patterns that Takar's military advisors recognized as advanced combat formations. These weren't explorers or diplomats. These were warriors maintaining a battle-ready stance even in peacetime. Incoming. Transmission from the lead human vessel, reported the communications officer. Put them through. The main screen filled with the image of a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform. Takar noted the creature's forward-facing eyes, the strong jaw, the alert expression. This was clearly a predator species. This is Admiral Webb of the Terran Defense Fleet. State your business in this system. Takar was taken aback by the human's direct approach. Most galactic species began diplomatic contacts with elaborate courtesy rituals. I am Ambassador Takar of the Galactic Peacekeeping Coalition. We're here to investigate the recent incident with the Korthak Empire. The incident is resolved. The Korthak attacked this system and were repelled. Is there something specific you need? Admiral Webb, we need to understand what happened here. The Korthak Empire has been a threat to galactic peace for decades. No one has been able to stop them. We stopped them. What's to understand? Takar realized he was dealing with a species that had a fundamentally different approach to communication than any he had encountered. Admiral, perhaps we could meet in person? The Coalition would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with your species. That would be up to Earth Command, not me. I'm military, not diplomatic, but I can arrange for you to speak with our civilian representatives. 2 hours later, Takar found himself in another unprecedented situation, conducting diplomacy while surrounded by heavily armed warships. The human vessels maintained their defensive positions throughout the meeting, ready for combat at a moment's notice. Dr. Rebecca Torres represented the human civilian government, and she was far more diplomatic than Admiral Webb, but even she couldn't hide the fundamental differences between humanity and the rest of galactic civilization. Dr. Torres, Takar began, The Coalition would like to welcome humanity to the galactic community. We have protocols for integrating new species into our peaceful coexistence framework. We appreciate that, Ambassador. But I should point out that we're not exactly new to galactic affairs. We've been trading with several species for decades. Yes, but always on a limited basis. Full integration would involve accepting certain restrictions on military activities, agreeing to diplomatic arbitration for conflicts, and submitting to coalition oversight on territorial expansion. Dr. Torres was quiet for a moment. Ambassador, I don't think you understand our situation. We didn't come here seeking integration into galactic society. We came here because people were being killed and no one else was helping them. The Coalition has established procedures for these situations. Your procedures would have taken weeks. These people didn't have weeks. But military intervention should always be a last resort, used only after all diplomatic options have been exhausted. Diplomatic options? Dr. Torres looked genuinely confused. Ambassador, the Korthak were bombing cities full of civilians. What diplomatic option addresses that? Takar felt the conversation slipping away from him. Economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, negotiated settlements, with people who were committing genocide, who had already destroyed 17 worlds. Every conflict has underlying causes that can be addressed through proper mediation. Dr. Torres stared at him. Ambassador, with respect, I think you're living in a fantasy. Some conflicts can't be mediated. Some people can't be reasoned with. Sometimes the only way to stop evil is to fight it. But violence only leads to more violence. The cycle of retaliation sometimes does. But sometimes violence leads to peace. The Korthak aren't attacking anyone else right now, are they? Takar had to admit they weren't. Dr. Torres, the Coalition is concerned about the precedent this sets. If every species decides to solve their problems through military force, every species can't, that's the point. Most galactic species are peaceful like the Zephyrians. They can't fight back against aggressors. That's why they need someone who can. And you believe humans should fill that role? I believe humans are willing to fill that role when necessary. Whether we should is a different question. The conversation continued, but Takar realized that everything had changed. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had been built on the principle that all conflicts could be resolved peacefully. The existence of species like the Korthak had been an inconvenient exception to that rule. But humans represented something else entirely. A species powerful enough to enforce peace through strength, but also restrained enough to use that power only when necessary. Over the following weeks, word of humanity's intervention spread throughout the galaxy. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Some species, particularly those who had suffered under Korthak attacks, hailed humanity as liberators. They wanted immediate alliance with Earth, hoping for protection against other aggressive species. Other civilizations, especially those in the Coalition's core worlds, viewed humanity as a dangerous, destabilizing force. They worried that human military capabilities would upset the delicate balance of galactic politics. The hegemony of peaceful worlds, a confederation of garden world species, called for an emergency session to address the Deathworld threat. They proposed coordinated action to contain humanity in their home system before they could expand further. But their military analysts delivered sobering news. Based on the battle at Aquinas Prime, the human Third Fleet alone could defeat the combined naval forces of the hegemony. Any attempt to contain Earth would likely result in the hegemony's complete destruction. On Aquinas Prime, Flux singer Mariel found herself in the impossible position of serving as the first alien ambassador to humanity. The Zephyrians had decided to accept the human offer of a mutual defense treaty, despite their fear of their new allies. They saved us, she explained to the Coalition delegation. Whatever they are, whatever they're capable of, they use their power to protect innocent people. That has to count for something. But they're so violent, protested one of the Coalition diplomats. They treat warfare as a normal part of existence. Yes, they do. And that's exactly why we need them. The galaxy is not as peaceful as we pretend it is. There are predators out there, species like the Korthak, who will take whatever they want by force. We need someone willing and able to stop them. But what if the humans become the predators? Mariel was quiet for a moment, remembering her conversations with Dr. Torres and Admiral Webb. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, they're the only ones standing between civilized species and the monsters in the dark. 6 months later, The first human Zephyrian joint patrol encountered a pirate fleet attacking a civilian convoy. The pirates surrendered immediately upon identifying human vessels among the defenders. Word spread quickly. There were people in the galaxy now who would fight back. For the first time in decades, the space lanes were truly safe. The galaxy's political landscape had been permanently altered. The age of purely diplomatic solutions was over. A new balance had emerged, one maintained not just by negotiation and compromise, but by the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, human ships were watching, and they were willing to fight.